So curing your clear, bake cycles, or even if you don't have bake, right? Still the dry cycle, let's say air dry. This video is going to be a little more specific on bake cycles, but really the point I'm going to try and drive home here for you is paying attention to the P sheet, following the directions. Too many times I'll go into a shop, I'll get phone calls from guys and say, hey, my clear's not drying. I'm baking it at 140 for half an hour and it's still soft. So it's interesting, you know, again, you have to kind of learn to step back and look at the big picture, right? It's probably not drying because on the P sheet, generally everything is measured for metal temp. So when they say, if a manufacturer says that the bake cycle for this particular XXX clear is 140 degrees, that's metal temp, not ambient air temp. So the dial that you set that booth to, if you set it to 140, that doesn't mean the metal temp is going to get to 140. Maybe it's only getting to 125. So you're under baking, right? Now, think of it, it's almost like preheating the oven when you're baking cookies, okay? That's the best analogy I got for you. You got to kind of preheat that oven, and the clock doesn't really start until that, you know, you've reached that 400 degree oven temp, right? And when you're baking cookies. Same thing with the clear coat, same thing with bake cycles. Even if it's a forced dry primer cycle, right? 140 degrees, or some clears 120. Again, depends on what product you're using, but that's what it's referring to. So how do you know if you're getting to 140? Those metal temperature guns is a great way, inexpensive, and it's a tool that you can use. When I was painting data every day, I was in a shop in Oakland, California, and in the mornings it'd be 50 degrees and foggy, but in the afternoon it could be 90. So you know, you can have a 30, 40 degree temperature swing in one day. And of course, that's going to really change the bake cycle and what is required for that day. So I would almost be, you know, if I had 5 bake cycles a day, 5 booth cycles, I should say, bake cycles too, I would have to I would have to, you know, temp gun that panel each, you know, every hour and a half cycle, right? Just because it would change. So if ambient temperature outside is 50, maybe I had to crank the booth up to 160 for the metal temp to get to 138, 139, 140, right? To try and get to that zone, that nice butter, you know, sweet spot that they want. If it's 90 degrees outside, all of a sudden in the afternoon, last bake cycle of the day, hey, and the stuff had to go, maybe I got to turn it to 135, and it's gonna get me to 140, right? So being self-aware and conscious of what you're doing day to day, hour to hour, job to job, you know, it's something that you got to pay attention to. So learning how to use your booth, learning how to use, some are still really analog. Some of the new ones are all digital and touch, and hey, I'm not in a shop and spraying every day anymore. So I get to see a lot of them, but you know, some of them can be a little confusing, a little overwhelming. Some of the technologies come a long way. So if that's the case, hey, get with your rep, right? Get with that booth rep and whoever services it for you or whoever installed it, and if they're still around, of course that is, and give it your best shot to learn how to use that puppy, right? That's going to be the best act moving forward to prevent you from having any hiccups in the shop or under-dried, you know, under-cured products on something that maybe was really critical and had to go, or I also see this over bake, you know, and you're like burning the cake, right, in the oven. It just you put it in there for too long, and that's the case. Some of these new speed clears, maybe the bake cycle is a lot lower, right? Maybe it doesn't want 140, maybe 115. It just, again, depending on the make. But I'll have guys, I'll go in and they'll call, hey man, the clear is not looking that great. It's dying back a little bit. It's looking a little dull. The first thing I'll go to the booth and look at and they got it to 160, you know, and again, it's just something you really got to be proactive and something you have to kind of be paying attention and cognizant of really every day. Temperature change, season change, climate change, that is when the phone starts ringing a lot, right? That's when people need to know, hey man, did you guys reformulate this? Everything's different. I can't get it to work, and I was working last week. Well, last week it was snowing, and this week it's 95 degrees, right? So sometimes we forget because we're creatures of habit, and we get into a routine, and it's day in and day in and day in and day out and day out and day out, and we get used to something. But again, it's something that you gotta pay attention to. So again, really cure cycles, watch that temperature, metal temp specifically, and make sure that, hey, as the day progresses and weather changes throughout the day, make sure you're adjusting that booth. Use your equipment to your advantage, right? And it'll get you to be more efficient. You're not going to have to dry things as long, right? If it's cold, you're going to be more conservative on energy costs for the owner of your facility. That'll go a long way too. So really something to think about.